Everybody, we're going to do the weekly update here from the legislature. So I'm just going to start with the impeachment resolution. The House brought forth by Al Green, Representative Al Green from Texas, an impeachment resolution. And just so you understand, anytime there's one of these resolutions, there will be verbiage in it that says we should impeach the president because. And it'll list all these things. And essentially, quite honestly, talking to some members from the other side, they said, look, it was a terribly drafted resolution. It basically said, I don't like what the president says, so we should impeach him. In any case, it was brought by Speaker Pelosi and her party, and this is also what's called a privileged resolution, so they have to bring it to the floor and deal with it. And the way they dealt with it was they voted to table it. So we actually didn't vote directly on the impeachment to vote for impeachment or to vote against impeachment. What they said was this is a privileged resolution that has to be dealt with, and they made a motion to table the resolution, which just means we kind of put it on the table, so to speak, and we don't deal with it. In that sense, 95 were in favor to it, and 332 were opposed to it. Now understand, there's a majority of Democrats in Congress, that they control Congress. So to only get 95 votes, there was one who marked present, who voted present. That was Mr. DeFazio from Oregon. But my point is that for all the discussion about impeachment, and finally there's in a sense a vote on it, even though it was a vote to table, it only got 95 votes. It takes roughly about 218 to pass. It depends on the membership that day. So that did not happen. And I just want to put this in context too. While we're voting on impeachment, and we spent a day and a half dealing with it, if you watched any of the floor activity, including someone abandoning the chair, just walking away, just said, I've had enough, and walking away from the chair, and violating the rules as the parliamentarian stated the rules. They're very specifically in black and white written in the rule book. The speaker violated the rules, and we had a rule vote on it. The chair was abandoned, and we wasted essentially a day.
What does the chair mean?
The chair. That's the person that's standing in the speaker's chair that is overseeing or administering the debate, so to speak. And so you never leave the chair abandoned. Somebody always has to be there. And the guy said, the gentleman who was called the speaker's pro tem, he's the speaker's representative, took the gavel and said, I abandoned the chair, and walked away. He was so sick of what was happening. It was the parliamentarian said to the speaker, you have violated the rules. And she didn't agree, and the guy that was in charge said, I've had enough of this, and walked away. But while all that's happening, my point is all that's happening, we haven't done a thing with the border crisis at all. We're not dealing with China. We're not dealing with Iran. We're not dealing with healthcare.
Infrastructure.
We're not dealing with infrastructure. We haven't had a hearing on infrastructure. So anyhow, so that's the one thing, the impeachment efforts. The Intelligence Authorization, this is where we authorize, not pay for, but we authorize our intelligence operation, which is essentially supposed to be for foreign spying on foreign entities that are malign to the United States of America. And I say that very specifically because that's what it was designed to be. I voted no, and I voted no in the past because we still have, among other things, this Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, which is, they call it the FISA court. We're supposed to be spying on, used to spy on as necessary, malign actors, terrorists, other countries, whatever, but we're using it to spy on Americans. And until we fix that, I don't want the federal government spying on Americans. It violates our Fourth Amendment rights, and I took an oath to the Constitution. And so until we get these abuses under control, I voted no, but it passed, as it has passed in the past. We also voted for, let me see, what was it called here? The Raise the Wage Act. It was 231 in favor, 199 opposed. I opposed it. It was 100. It is a 107% increase in the minimum wage, the $15 minimum. It makes it a $15 national minimum wage. And just a couple of things to consider here. Everybody wants to make as much as they can, but you got to wonder in a time where there are 7.5 million open jobs right now. And if you don't like this job for any reason, but if one of those reasons is I think I should be paid more, you have 7.5 million other opportunities to go get a job where you can pay more. And the great news is the market's actually working. It's actually driving wages up, as opposed to the federal government saying, well, $15 an hour works in San Francisco or Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, but that's the same wage that's going to work in Gratz or in Hummelstown or in Shiremanstown or in Yo. That's ridiculous. To have a federal government set a minimum wage across the country that is a one-size-fits-all. And the big news is, if we really want to help, this, generally speaking, we're always trying to help people that are underserved in the wage, and we should be. I think that's a great thing when we can do that, when it's the federal government's place. This is seen to generally help the lowest 2%, those on the bottom 2% of the wage scale. But those are usually people like high school students, college, maybe students that are in college, or people maybe that never graduated high school. They're starting in the wage market. And if you raise the minimum wage, what happens is an employer has to make a decision. I know when I was an employer, the last thing we did was hire another employee. You did everything you could to make sure that you were as efficient as you could be, because it was a huge obligation and there's a huge expense. It's not just the wage that comes with it, it's all the benefits and so on and so forth, the vacation, the health insurance, etc., the workman's comp insurance. And so what happens when you raise the minimum wage, what happens is employers say, I'm either going to cut benefits, or I'm going to cut hours, or I'm not going to hire. So you literally end up hurting the people we're trying to help. At a minimum, the minimum wage should be done at the state, and I actually think it should be more local than that, if at all. But the market is working. As a matter of fact, wages are up, I think, for the 11th month in a row. Wages keep increasing. 11th straight month, year-to-year gains, over 3%. So wages are going up based on the market, based on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and reduced regulation and a booming economy. So the federal government really doesn't need to step in here and actually chill what we have as a great economy. But that's what happened with that. We've had a bill for some time as Republicans to end what's called the Cadillac Tax. It has to do with health care plans. And what the government determines is a Cadillac plan. That's what they called it, a plan that offers a lot of benefits. And so there is going to be an additional tax on those plans. And the great news is that this is a bill that I had co-sponsored in the past. I co-sponsored it this time, that we voted 419 in favor, 6 opposed to pass, to repeal the 40% tax on employer health care. 40% tax is what it would do. And essentially, the health care provider, which is the employer, just says, I'm not going to offer the plan anymore. How does that help anybody? So it's taken us a few years. This was part of the Affordable Care Act, this Cadillac tax, and it's finally repealed for good. Both Democrats and Republicans agreed. So the good news, too, for people that say, why aren't you working to fix Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act? Here's another opportunity, an example where Democrats and Republicans got together and said, this is wrong, this is bad policy, and you saw the vote totals. So we did that as well. I want to let you know that we had a contempt vote regarding the citizenship question. And the contempt vote was for Wilbur Ross, the Secretary of Commerce, and the Attorney General, William Barr. This is a criminal contempt vote. It did pass. So let me see if I can see what the numbers are here. 230 voted in favor of contempt, 198 voting opposed to contempt. Understanding that this is over the citizenship question, the administration has sent numerous individuals 31,000 pages of documents and 5 different Commerce Department officials for transcribed interviews over a period of time regarding this. And understand, too, there's absolutely zero evidence at all that the White House had anything to do with this. This is all done by the Commerce Department.
To do with what? The contempt?
The citizenship question on the census. This was
which has been on the census since
I think somewhere between 1820, different variations between 1820 and 1880, from 1880 to 2010 continuously. The citizenship question has been on the census since that time. It was taken off in 2010. The Commerce Department wanted to put it back on. There's been a question of the Commerce Department's motive. The Supreme Court said it absolutely can be on the citizen or on the census, but had a question about the Commerce Department's motives. The contempt is about an investigation trying to tie their motives to the White House. There is zero evidence that the White House was involved in the discussion prior to saying that we want the citizenship question on the census. But that's why we had a criminal contempt hearing. So just think about this as well. This would have made Attorney General Barr find himself in criminal contempt. Well, they're saying he's in contempt because he hasn't complied with Congress regarding the investigation. 31,000 documents, all the interviews, and so again, this is what we're spending our time doing. It passed. I don't think that the Attorney General is going to throw himself in jail, and quite honestly, nor do I think he should throw himself in jail. The last thing I want to leave you with is a bill that I co-sponsored or sponsored. I'm the prime sponsor, and we offered it. We introduced it this week. Is to bring down the cost of college education. It is way, way too high, and I will tell you that my opinion is part of it is because the federal government just keeps on paying the bill, and colleges keep on submitting the bill and increasing the price, usually double, triple the rate of inflation.
Why is the federal government paying the bill for college?
Because colleges come in and ask for appropriations, and because if you don't give them the appropriation, you're opposed to education, and you're opposed to helping people afford college. So we give them more money, and then they raise the tuition rate. Because they can get it.
Which is too expensive for students, so they have to take out loans, and the loans are too expensive, and they can't pay for them.
So they keep asking for federal government to pay more money.
So the taxpayer is the burden of all of it.
Taxpayers paying the burden. Well, assuming that's not necessarily true. Assuming the student pays back the loan. But the loan default rate is fairly high, and the amount of loans
wasn't there something years ago that said that there was like a loan forgiveness, like if you couldn't afford to pay it back, you just didn't pay it back?
Well, there have been forgivenesses in the past, but we don't want to get to that point. We don't want to get to that point. Anyhow, my idea was to incentivize the colleges to offer courses and curriculum where students could be taught that and get a job in their field enough to pay back the loan. Right, because colleges are offering courses where you can take a 4 or 5 year, spend 4 or 5 years in college, get loans, and then you get out and you can't get a job.
Right.
So the idea is to say to a college, if they're going to co-sponsor your loan, if the college will co-sponsor your loan, co-sign your loan, we will give them a reduction in the interest rate. We will give the student a reduction in the interest rate.
Why would the college do that?
Because then students have more an incentive to go there because they're paying less tuition, right? Because there's a lower interest rate. But it also encourages the college to offer courses where you can get a job in your field afterwards, because there are a lot of courses where you can't get a job. And so that's the general nuts and bolts of it, because we're trying to make college more affordable and colleges more accountable. Colleges have no skin in the game, right? Now it's the student or the taxpayer on the hook. The college has no skin in the game. They can charge as much as they want. Once the student defaults, the college is getting its money because the taxpayers are going to pay for it. Right? So we offered that this week as a potential start of a conversation about a solution. We're looking for solutions. That's what happened this week. Next week, the Attorney General, Robert Mueller, or not the Attorney General, the previous special counsel, Robert Mueller is set to testify. We'll see how that goes. It's been moved off and changed a little bit, but it's scheduled to happen next week, and that'll probably be the big news for the week, barring anything else. So we'll talk to you then. Stay cool, and have a blessed week.